Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm Two Commas and you are watching episode 14 in Year of the Wager. Thanks for tuning in. This episode will actually mark a new chapter in Year of the Wager as we are starting off at the World Series of Poker for 2025 again. We're going to see if we can make this a profitable summer and year for me. And I wanted to say thank you to all of the people that came up to me and introduced themselves as fans of the channel and told me how much they appreciated me making mixed game content and also mixed game tutorials. It was very humbling to me that so many people introduced themselves. I enjoyed meeting all of you all, and in the coming weeks, as I talk about my experiences at the World Series of Poker, I'll actually dive into some of those people that I met and introduce them to you as well. But I met people from the Netherlands, from Korea. I met two people from China that told me they were big fans of the vlog, even though poker and YouTube are both illegal in China, so they didn't want to be on camera. But it just blew my mind how many people were fans of the channel and of Year of the Wager and of mixed games, which is why I started this channel in the first place, to introduce people to mixed games so that I could have more people to play with. And it seems to be working. We had 6 cash games of 2040 mix at the World Series of Poker, which is unheard of. And I got to play in some of those. And in fact, today's episode will be a 2040 mixed game at the World Series of Poker in Las Vegas. So thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Do me a favor, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Once we get to 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to host a series of meetup games where we play nothing but mixed poker. So I'm looking forward to that. So do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and share this channel with your friends. Once again, thanks for coming up and introducing yourself. It was very humbling, and it gives me the fuel to keep on going and making this type of content for you. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and dive in. We're going to be pulling into the 2040 mixed game at the WSOP Paris banquet room. They've got a lot of mixed games in the mix, and we're going to sit down and try our hand. They've got 3 tables going, and they're actually getting ready to start a 4th. They ultimately ended up having 6 tables, which I've never heard of in the 2040 mix. But hey, I'm not complaining. That's why I started the channel. I get 2 racks of red, which is $1,000. That's what I feel comfortable buying in for at a 2040 game. It works out when you start a new game, actually, because you get to pick some of the games you want to play, because you only need to keep half of the games that are in the must move. If you don't know what a must move is, that means your game will be a feeder table into the games that are already existing, meaning your name's going to get called in a list and you're going to have to change tables. That can be kind of annoying, but hey, I'm just glad to be playing 2040. Let's see what we start off with. I start off with a 3, 4, 6, 7 in Archie. If you don't know what Archie is, it's a double qualifier game where you need better than a pair of 9s for the high hand, or you can have better than an 8 low for the low half of the pot. You should be drawn to combos, so where you can win both the high and the low. That's what I'm doing, where I'm going for the gut shot. A 5 would be the perfect card. I don't get a 5 on my first draw. I actually get a deuce. I don't know if that's good or bad, because I don't know if 7-6 is going to be good enough to take down the pot. My opponent is still drawing though, so I decide to go ahead and bet into him on the 3rd draw. And he actually makes his hand on the 3rd draw and leads out into me for $40 and turns over a straight to the 6, which is an extremely powerful hand in Archie, and I'm upset that he got there. If you don't win the first one, you can't win them all. We give it another try on the 2nd hand, also playing Archie. I've got 3 to the wheel, With the ace 4-5, I go ahead and put my money in the pot and I draw 2. It's a little weird because on the second draw, I actually end up making 4 hearts. And at this point, I can change direction if I want to and go for the flush instead of a 7 low. I technically only have 7 outs to the flush, but I've got 12 outs to the low. If I hit any 2, 3, or 6, I'll make my low. And I decide to stick with the low, although I would have pulled the 10 of hearts in and I would have made my flush. And I didn't make my low because I got a king of spades and I am going in the wrong direction. For hand number 3, we're actually going to switch up the game and play deuce to 7 triple draw. You got to keep your head on the swivel when you're playing in these mixed games because you can lose track of the game you're playing if you don't pay attention. I start off with a 2-3-6. It's a little dangerous to keep a 6 because you should never draw to a straight and deuce to 7 triple draw. On my first draw though, I make a 5 and a 9. And a 9 is not normally going to take it down, but I'm on the button, so I play the position game and I bet and stay pat. And my opponent decides that he doesn't want to pay another $40 on the second draw and lets me have a small pot. Hand number 4 of deuce to 7 triple draw starts me off with just a 2 and a 4. Normally you don't want to be drawing 3 cards in deuce to 7, but hey, I got a deuce and that's normally all I need, plus a little bit of position, which isn't too bad right now in this game. I go ahead and draw 3, pulling the 3 of spades on my first draw. So I'm off to a good start with 2, 3, 4, although they are all spades, which you also don't want in deuce to 7. But on the second draw, I draw 2 and I hit the number 2. That's what I call the triple threat, and I'm leading out for a bet of $40. We know I'm going to stay pat and I'm going to bet again on the river. My opponent can't believe what I made. I made that beautiful number 2 hand. And maybe we're starting to turn it around. We lost our first 2, but now we've won 2 in a row. And we're feeling pretty good about this session. We're changing the game once again to Super Stud 8 or better. If you don't know how to play Super Stud, you get 4 cards down and you have to toss 2 of them before 4th Street is dealt or your hand is dead. I've got 6, 7, 8 of clubs, which means I'm drawing to a straight flush. This hand can be a high hand or a low hand. It's a super powerful hand to start off with, so I'm definitely in the pot when they kick it up to $40. The very next card I get is the 10 of clubs, and once you have another club on 4th Street, you are now actually favored to win the pot by 7th Street. So I love this card. The only way it could be better is if it was a low club, but I'm not going to complain because I only need 1 more card for a straight flush, and I'm definitely in the pot. The ace of spades helps me on my low draw, but doesn't get me any closer to a club. But never fear, because the ace of clubs is here on 6th Street. And you can't be mad because now I've got an ace high flush with a redraw to the low. I'm still betting, hoping to get the whole pot. The king of diamonds does nothing for me on the low side. Good thing my opponent wasn't going for a low. He actually has trip 8s and was trying to boat up and didn't get there. I'm pulling in a massive pot and Super Stud 8 or better. After that hand, I was unfortunately moved to a new table where we're starting off with deuce to 7 triple draw again. My hand is 2, 4, 5, 6. You've got 4 to a 7 high hand, but I don't feel that comfortable keeping the 6, as if I hit a 3, I'd be in bad shape. So I actually tossed the 6 and the ace on my first draw and pull in a 5 and a 10. That's not gonna cut it. So I draw 2 again. Here's where I probably need to tighten up my game a little bit, meaning if I'm not improving, I should be relinquishing the hand. The 7 ends up keeping me in it though for one more draw, because if I hit the 3, I've got the nuts. And what comes in on the last draw but none other than another 4. Not what I needed, and I'm gonna have to lay it down and lose my first pot at my new table. Hand number 7, we're back to super stud 8 or better, and I start off with 2, 4, 7 after I tossed the deuce of diamonds and the 10 of diamonds. And my villains are also showing that they're going for a low with a 3 and a 4 up. The Jack of Hearts on 4th Street does absolutely nothing for me. You have to be careful on these stud and Razz hands because there's an extra street of big bets on 7th Street, and these pots can get huge and costly. The Jack of Spades actually puts me in a confusing spot because now I've got a pair of jacks showing, which is the best thing showing, but I don't feel that confident with it. The 8 of Spades makes me feel like I do have a chance to get a flush by 7th Street and potentially a low, but the river is very disappointing as I end up bringing in a 9, and that's not going to get me the low. I don't feel like it's going to get me the high either, but when my jacks are actually beating what's showing, pot odds say that I have to call, and pot odds can go jump in a lake because it just cost me another $40. Maybe I'll do better on the next hand of super stud because I'm starting off with a pair of wired aces. So I go ahead and jump into the pot. 5 of Spades on 4th Street is not really doing me any good. Neither is the 7 of Diamonds on 5th Street. Actually, I'm not sure why I'm continuing to stay in this pot. My opponent is showing a flush on the board, but luckily for me, I did count the number of spades on 3rd Street, and I knew it was unlikely that my opponent already had a flush. And by 6th Street, I've now got aces up, and even if he does have a flush, I'm hoping that I can boat up as I don't see a 5 in anyone else's door cards or up cards. The deuce of diamonds doesn't help me, but everyone decides to check 7th Street and allows me to get away with aces up, taking down half the pot. You can't be mad at it when you play bad but run good. We need a lot of that happening in this game today. The very next hand of super stud 8 or better, we start off with 3, 4, 5. I think that's a beautiful start to what could be the nut low as well as a straight for the high. The 3 of diamonds is an awful card because now I've paired up and I lower my chances of making a low until I get the 3 of spades. I mean, what can I say? That 3 of diamonds was now the perfect card. I take it all back. I've got tripped 3s, plus I've got 3, 4, 5 of spades, and the jack of spades puts me even closer. I can get a flush, I can get a boat, I can definitely win the high half of this pot, and the river spade seals the deal. I've now got a flush, although I probably didn't need it. There are 2 other people in the pot, and guess what? A flush is going to be good enough to take down half the pot, although I wish I could have scooped the whole thing. Once again, we've got a new game. It never stops changing in the mix. We are now playing Badacey. If you're not familiar with Badacey, check out my Badacey tutorial video. But you've got a split pot game between your best ace to 5 hand and your best Badugi hand. I start off with ace 5 of 2 different suits, which is probably not the best. But for some reason I'm in the hand, I need to have a little bit more discipline. But on my first draw, I make the 4 of spades and the 6 of hearts. So I'm a little closer to making the hand that I need. This is the importance of drawing smooth though, because when I make the 10 of clubs, I know I got to toss it again and hopefully I'm going to get a better hand, but I don't. I get the Jack of diamonds, which is a Badugi, but makes it dangerous because it's not a very good Badugi. But guess what? My opponent also has a Jack high Badugi, which is pretty crazy, but he has a better Jack high Badugi because he drew smooth. So his Badugi is Jack 4 deuce ace and mine is Jack 5 4 ace, which means he wins the Badugi side of the pot and he wins the ace to 5 side of the pot, which means I don't get any money, and that's not how 2 Commas likes to play. So maybe I'm on tilt for this next hand of Badacey. I probably shouldn't be in the hand at all. I start off with 3 4 7, draw a couple of cards. The first draw doesn't work out at all, and I'm deciding to stick with it, which I don't know, maybe I just don't know how to play poker anymore. And I decide to go ahead and give it another shot. And to be honest, it's not because I don't know how to play poker, it's because I'm seeing so many of the low cards that I think I should probably stay in the hand when I've got a pair of 7, a pair of 3s, I've seen some 4s, etc., but honestly, that's just an excuse. They're still betting and my hand hasn't gotten any better. I need to be letting it go. But sometimes, like I've said earlier, you just have to play bad and run good. That's exactly what happens in this hand because I shouldn't be calling the raise. And I toss 2 cards, which you should never be doing on the last draw. But wouldn't you know, I get 2 cards that allows me to stay in it for the final bet. I pull in an ace and a 5, which gives me a 7 high in Badacey, which isn't that bad at all. I don't have a Badugi though, and that's going to allow me to win the 7 high side of the pot in the ace to 5 game. So in my next hand of Badacey, I've got 3 to the wheel, 3 4 5, and a button in front of me. So I feel like I'm Superman and I'm hoping that no one has the kryptonite. And I decide to go ahead and put the $40 in the pot. And my first draw brings me in 2 face cards, which is not what I need at all. But the second draw gets a lot better and I pull an ace. That means all I'm going to need to do now is get a deuce. I won't have a Badugi, but I will have the wheel if I pull a deuce. So I call the $40 to see if I can toss the 9 and get something better. Well, ladies and gentlemen, when you play bad and you run bad, you don't catch anything better. You catch another 4, which means you're in bad shape, especially when my opponent is leading out with a bet of $40. My opponent can do that though because he has what's called the nut. Ace 2 3 4 5 with a 4 high Badugi. That's the type of hand you want to bet your house on, and that's the type of hand I don't have. So in my next hand, we decide to play a little bit better hand selection. We've got ace 2 5 of 3 different suits in Badacey. Now this is the type of hand you want to be raising with and getting in there and making some things happen. On my very first draw, I make a 6 high Badugi. I'm pretty confident I'm going to be taking at least half of this pot, so I raise it up to $60. And now all I need to do is make a decent ace to 5 hand. I don't think a 9 is going to get it done for me. So I toss the 9 and draw another card. Another 6 is also not going to get it done for me. But again, because I've got a third player in the pot, I want to keep the betting action on. Since I'm probably guaranteed to get at least half the pot, I want to put the squeeze on that third player and at least split his chips. So when I toss the 6 of hearts and pull in the 10 of clubs, that's not going to be any good either. And when we turn the cards over, I got pretty lucky because my opponent actually made the wheel, just didn't have a Badugi, and my Badugi bails me out for half the pot. On the next hand, we've actually switched the game up to Badeucey, and that means we're now playing for the best deuce to 7 hand for half the pot and a Badugi for the other half the pot. I actually misread my hand, which tends to happen sometimes when you're playing Badugi and you have a pair. Because I had a pair of 7s, I thought I had 2 suits, but you can't have a pair in Badugi, and so I technically didn't have 2 suits. And that works out against me because on my very first draw, I actually make a 7-6-5, which is a great deuce to 7 hand. But I've only got 2 suits and it was only heads up, which means only one other opponent in the pot, which means all the betting that was taking place pretty much means I didn't make any money in this hand. What a waste of a 7-6 and deuce to 7. We've switched the game up to Drawnaha now, and I'm dealt 3 9s, so I'm feeling really good about my hand, at least half of my hand. So I go ahead and raise it up, and the board comes out Ace Jack 10. If you don't know how to play Drawnaha, you are playing for the best 5-card poker hand in your hand and the best Omaha hand on the board. You get 1 draw in Drawnaha, and that happens after the flop comes out. So you can exchange up to 3 of your cards, and I will do a tutorial video on this in the future. But for the purposes of this video, a set of 9s in your hand is a very strong way to start off. And I've also got an opportunity to hit a straight with an open ender on the board, 8-9 Jack 10. It would be the lower side of the straight, but I'm not worried about it right now. We'll see how it plays out. After the first draw, I cannot improve, and I end up keeping just trip 9s in my hand. On the turn, there's a 4 of clubs, which basically means I don't have that strong of a hand on the board yet. And the river doesn't improve me either. But I'm pretty confident that my trip 9s will take it down. So I'm staying in the pot, although I have 2 other opponents, even when they raised on the turn. But the draw helped my opponent out a lot more than it helped me out, because he started with a pair of queens, and on his draw he actually pulled in a 3rd queen, and that means that trip 9s is not going to be effective for half the pot, because it loses the trip queens every time I've seen it turned over in a poker game. And I didn't have anything on the board worth writing home about either. This hand of Drawnaha ended up costing me some significant dollars. If you can't win with trip 9s though, maybe I can get a full house with 2 pair. I start off with jacks and 6s. So I'm going to give Drawnaha another run for the money. Drawnaha is not really my favorite game. I like the triple draw and the stud games better. But I'm not feeling too bad when I hit a set of jacks on the flop, which makes me feel good for having a chance to scoop the pot. I decided to toss the 3 to see if I can hit a boat in my hand, and it doesn't allow me to boat up when I pull in a 4, but when a 2 comes on the turn, what that does mean is I have a straight on the board and I have 2 pair in my hand. I'm feeling really good about scooping this pot, so I want to make sure I get some bets in the middle. But the river, as it tends to happen sometimes, ends up bailing my opponent out by allowing him to hit a flush, negating my straight on the board, but I still do pull in half the pot with my 2 pair in my hand. On the next hand of Drawnaha, I have an open-end straight draw in my hand. So I decide to go ahead and give the hand a chance. And the board comes out 2 Jack Queen, which I don't really have a shot at right now. But I toss my king in, and wouldn't you know it, bingo, on the very first draw, I hit that open ender. I've got a straight in my hand with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's see what the turn brings. It brings the 5 of diamonds, which means I have a steel wheel draw on the board. All we need is the ace of diamonds or the 6 of diamonds. I'll take that too. And we're going to be walking away with both ends of the pot. But the dealer cannot oblige and puts out the 7 of hearts on the river. I know that I'm walking away with the straight in my hand, but I don't have a chance to take down the board. But the pot is big enough where I'm not mad at getting half. Now we've decided to go over to Super Razz Dugi. We're going to be playing stud. We need the lowest possible hand on the Razz side of the game with a Badugi for the other half of the pot. To be quite honest, I should not have even been in this hand. I started off with 5, 9, ace. That's not the way you really want to start a game off. There's no qualifier in this, but it's just not that good of a hand. When I pair my 5 on 4th Street, I actually get confused and thought I had a different hole card other than a pair of 5s. So I'm super confused. I think I have a Badugi at this point in the hand because I've got the 5 of hearts and the 5 of clubs, but you can't have a pair when you have a Badugi. So when I turn my cards over, I think I actually have a 9 Badugi, and I don't have any Badugi, and my low hand is a 9-8 low, which is also not going to be enough to win the pot. I'm clearly playing poorly on this particular hand. I should have never started off with those 3 cards in the first place. And this just goes to show you how bad hand selection can actually lead to you losing a lot of money. So my advice to you would be, don't start off with bad cards. That's what we call poker lessons, ladies and gentlemen. So the next game we're going to be playing is Badugi. I'm on the button, which is where you want to be. I've got an ace in my hand, and I also have 3 different suits lower than an 8. So I'm deciding to get in there and mix it up. I like Badugi and deuce to 7 and ace to 5 better than I like split pot games like Badacey and Badeucey, simply because I like a little blood in the streets. I like it when the action is in there and the pot is only getting pushed to one person. So I'm going ahead and betting every street since I've got position and my opponents are still drawing. Something tells me when I get to the 3rd draw, although I didn't make a Badugi, that my opponents are still weak because they were still drawing. And although I haven't made a Badugi, I'm going to bet to represent it. And I feel fairly confident that my 3 card will hold up as well. I actually do get a caller, and they still can't beat the 3 card 7. And that is what you call a entire pot getting pushed your way in Badugi. On the next game, we're back to playing Archie, and I start off with a pair of aces. I don't know. Pair of aces is definitely a great starting point for Archie, but you do need to improve because normally a pair is not going to be enough to win the pot. You're going to need a 2nd pair to go along with it, and I technically had an ace 5 6 for a low draw, but I did want to try to get both sides of the pot and hope that my opponents didn't hit a low. After the first draw, I'm not any closer. I'm still stuck on a pair of aces, and I decide to toss my cards back in for another shot, but this time I only decide to toss the 6 in. My thought is that if I can hit a jack or queen, I'll have at least 2 pair. The 9 of diamonds is not a jack or a queen last I checked, which means it's going to cost me $40 more to toss the 9 in again and see if I can either hit an ace, jack, or queen. 3 of hearts is not an ace, jack, or queen, and a pair of aces is simply not going to hold up in this occasion. and that's unfortunate. So the aces didn't do it for me, so I decided that instead of going for a mere pair, I'm going to go for a flush. I start off with 3 diamonds, and the pot is already starting to get a little big in this game of Archie. The first draw doesn't do it for me at all, but again, if you can't afford the $20, then you shouldn't be playing the game. The second draw gets me a little bit closer with 4 diamonds. Can the third draw get me there? I hope so, because it's going to cost me $40 to find out. I put my $40 in the pot. I throw the 3 of hearts away. And what do I get? I get a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful diamond. Thank you, thank you, thank you, poker gods, for putting a flush inside my hand. It wasn't enough to scoop the pot, as my opponent actually made a 7 low on his third draw as well, but I'll take half of that juicy pot, and I'm feeling so good I think I can hit a flush again on the very next hand. So let's give it another shot where I've got 3 clubs, and it starts off just like last time, where the first draw gets me absolutely no closer whatsoever to a flush, and it's going to cost me $20 again to find out if I can get closer. But on the second draw, just like the last hand, I do get 1 card closer, and the third draw is going to be where I need to make it happen, because once again, it's going to cost me $40 to find out if I can hit that miracle 5th card that's going to be a club and give me the flush. And once again, the poker gods have smiled upon me. They've blessed me with another club, and I raise up the action, and I end up pulling in, once again, just half of the pot. In this next game of Archie, I start off with 2 pair on the button, 6s and deuces. I decide that I'm not going to go for the full house, although by 3rd Street you do have a 25% chance of hitting a full house. And I decide to do that because I don't think 6s and deuces are going to hold up against another 2 pair where somebody's starting off with aces or kings. And I decide to go for the low side of the pot. That ends up being a painful decision, as both my first and second draw don't get me there and actually would have given me a full house. But I can't fret over where I was. I need to concentrate on where I am. And where I am is on the path to a 7 low draw, going into the last draw. And a 9 of clubs is going to sink my efforts to make an 8 low or better. And I decide to try to bluff my opponent by betting $40 after the 3rd draw, since he was actually drawing 3 and I would hope that he would fold. But he was drawing 3 because he had a pair of aces, and his aces, unlike my aces, actually held up, and he ends up scooping the entire pot. And I am on tilt right now. I'm playing one more hand of Archie, and I decide to jump in the pot with ace 5-7. Again, not the best starting hand and doesn't have a lot of potential to win both sides of the pot. After the first draw, I realize that I'm not any closer to hitting what I need to hit. And after the second draw, I realize that I'm still not even closer to hitting what I need to hit to win this hand. And by the 3rd draw, I don't even qualify for the low. And this is how you start to lose a lot of money in a 20-40 mix game. When you lose 2, 3, 4 hands in a row, when you're losing $200 or $300 on each of those hands, that's how your buy-in of $1,000 can quickly start to dwindle and put you on the outside looking in. This next hand of Archie is actually a little bit painful for me. It brings back sad memories of what could have been, but I'm actually dealt a straight to the 9, and that means I want to pump it up because I think I've got a good chance of taking down the high side of this pot. The bad thing about having a straight to the 9 is that you can't qualify for the low, and you have to hope that your opponents actually don't hit a low. There's a lot of action in this hand. People are still taking cards. a lot of betting going on. I don't know if my 9 is going to hold up, and I'm actually thinking about throwing away the 9 and trying to go for a low. In hindsight, that would have been a good move because my opponents were both going for the high, and they both made flushes, with one of my opponents having an ace high flush and actually beating the other opponent. But that means my 9 high straight is no good, and if I'd have thrown away the 9 and went for a low hand, I would have had at least a chance for half the pot. But ultimately, I don't get any of the pot, and that's sad. That means the last hand of this session is going to be an ultimate big O. I'm not a fan, as I've said, of the Omaha games, the Drawnaha games, the ultimate big O games in the mix. I prefer the studs and the triple draws. I do know how to play them, but they're not my strongest games. And that means that I'm all in, probably a little tilted, and I'm all in with an ace, king, jack, 4, and deuce, and that's not going to be good enough to win the best high or best low on either board. And that means I'm walking away a loser in my first session of 2040 at the WSOP. So as you can see, it did not work out for me as well as I thought it would in this first cash game of the World Series experience. But never fear, I have the feeling that the tide will turn in some of the coming episodes, and I'm looking forward to that myself. I think one of the things that may have worked against me is so many people came up to me and told me that they actually watched my videos to prepare for some of the mixed game tournaments, and obviously is helping them in cash games as well because the games are not as easy as they used to be. But that's okay. That's the price I'll pay in order to get more people into this genre of poker. So thanks again for tuning in. Please hit the subscribe and like buttons. Share it with your friends. And I will see you in the next episode of Year of the Wager.